Hey everyone, welcome back to CyberSecurityTV. This week we're going to talk about the sensitive data exposure. This is one of the OWASP top 10 items, and we'll see how, when you're pen testing an application, how you're going to pen test, for this particular vulnerability or the section of vulnerability. Because this was not part of the OWASP top 10 2013. As you can see, this was this has moved up to the A3 with the injection and broken authentication, so which is very huge, and I'm sure a lot of applications and even during the 2019 or 2020 we have seen many breaches where the sensitive data is being exposed. So we're gonna see what OWASP wants us as a pen tester you wanna focus on when auditing against this standard. As per the OWASP, many web applications and APIs do not properly protect sensitive data such as financial, healthcare, and PII. So we are mostly talking about sensitive information here. Attackers may steal or modify such weakly protected data to conduct credit card fraud, identity theft, or other crimes. Sensitive data may be compromised without extra protection, such as encryption at rest or in transit, and requires special precautions when exchanged with the browser. So first off, what you want to do is you want to highlight or you want to find out what's the sensitive data that you have that you want to protect. So what are the assets you want to protect? So typical terminology in your house, cash or jewelry is the asset you want to protect. So accordingly, the same way, what asset do you have in the application you want to protect? And now then once you categorize, the categories could be you can derive from any compliance standard, such as it could be an internal information, it could be a public. So whichever is available on the public website is called public information. Then you have confidential, or you can also have sensitive. Confidential is something like your customer data. Internal information is something like a salary information of the employees. That's an internal, or the HR data. That's an internal information. So you categorize this data into this category and then decide how do you want to protect each of the data, right? Now, a crucial part is how do you pen test? How do you pen test against the sensitive data exposure? So as we saw from the definition, it purely lacks some of the common things. When I say common things is you are not having right encryption on, you do not have right headers set up. So this could be because we have lack of training, maybe among the developers, among the engineers, among the DevOps. They don't know much about the security, so they don't know. But if you put in strict policy that any internal or confidential information has to be encrypted, then they would strictly have to follow that policy, and you do not be a victim of exploitation of this vulnerability. So when you pen test, make sure they are following this some of the standards. Now let's take a look at some of the examples. Let's say your application is using encrypts the credit card numbers, or encrypts SSN or the PI health data of the patients, but it uses an encryption key which is old, which has never been rotated. So for example, if that key has compromised, then attacker can use that compromised key even after years to decrypt the data. So that's a bad practice. The other example is you're not using encryption in transit. So some of the pages, for example, login page is using encryption. However, the change password does not. So that means change password page is transmitting all the data in the clear text. Again, that's a big no-no. So when you pen test, look out for such scenarios. Sometimes, we always say, oh, you need to hash the password rather than encryption. That's good. Some people, developers do that, but then sometimes they do not use salting techniques. They just use a pure hashing, and then you can use the rainbow method, as an attacker or as a pen tester, you can use the rainbow method and derive the clear text from the hash. So those techniques are you're using some weak mechanism to protect your precious assets. So that's something when you're pen testing, find what the assets that client is want to protect, and then try to uncover the gaps or the misconfiguration among those. The other questions you may also ask, when you're pen testing to yourself is, do you find anywhere that the data is transmitted in the clear text, not just the HTTP, but also the SMTP and the FTP as well? So always, not just the external traffic, but the internal traffic, like between the load balancer and the host or the web servers or backend system, has to be encrypted. So when you're pen testing, make sure each and every connections are encrypted with strong ciphers. Then make sure how the data is being stored at rest. Do they encrypt the backups? Are they encrypting not just the database but also the backups? So that's a big thing you wanna focus on. Then, as we discussed, the encryption key has to be rotated and it has to be strong. And make sure if you're using client-side encryption for the confidential information. We have I have explained already what the difference is between client-side, server-side, and other encryption. So make sure you go through that if you're not clear. But make sure that the system you're pen testing is using client-side encryption for protecting the sensitive data. And of course, you make sure all the headers are using right. A request is using right headers like HSTS and then course policy and CSP. So all sort of secure headers they're following. Now, as a web developer or as a pen tester, what would you recommend if you find one of this finding? What do you recommend to prevent to the developers? So one thing is take help of compliance. There are PCI DSS, GDPR, ISO, SOC. There's just so many compliance out there. So you can take guidance from any of these compliance and help to prevent this vulnerability. So for example, any compliance would say, yeah, you can use AES 256 to encrypt the data at rest or whatever, right? You can use TLS 1.2. PCI would say use the TLS 1.2 and not 1.0 or 1.1 because credit card information you cannot use TLS 1.0 to transfer that sensitive information as per the PCI. So depending on which compliance is applicable, take the help from the compliance and determine what controls you need to implement. The second thing, reduce the blast radius. The blast radius is if this vulnerability gets exploited, what it's gonna expose or how much it's going to be exposed. So if you reduce the scope by just storing the information which is really necessary. So when you're doing the pen test, determine does the client really need to store this information? If not, then can they just get rid of it? If you're just processing, if you are using third party for processing the credit card information, can you just ask them to process that information and then don't store this credit card, so you don't have to control this information or protect this information or asset? So that's going to be a big thing. And the last thing is follow all the security best practices. As I said, in the request, make sure they're following the HSTS and CSP and course, and they're using encryption at the best, and they're not caching sensitive information, right? That's a big thing again. Sometimes people store sensitive information in the local cache, assuming that no one can get to it, but that's not true. With the access, you can exploit such vulnerabilities. So this was a quick, explanation on what you want to focus on when you're auditing against this standard or this particular section of the OWASP Top 10. And let me know if there is anything else that you have focused or you want to focus when you're auditing this particular section I might have missed. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have in the comment section below. That's it for this time. If you enjoy watching this video, please hit the thumbs up button and follow CyberSecurityTV. I'll see you guys next Monday. Thank you.